Woohoo! What's going on, everybody? So I'm sure you can hear me, but you can't see anything. Give me just a second. I am papering everything together as we speak. So we should be able to get the Google Meet right here. Sounds like that's Danny. Danny, how you doing? What's going on?
Oh, well, good afternoon, Senor Schmitz.
How are you? I'm
Uh, I guess to put it mildly, I'm overwhelmed. Obviously, Rule of Three hasn't been recorded in a couple months now, or going on a couple of months and that's almost wholly my fault, and I take full responsibility for that.
Oh, I
But I
wouldn't
mean,
worry
I
too
would
much.
I would just hope that our fans understand that getting married and working two full-time jobs and everything kind of takes it out of you,
Oh
and
yeah.
I value my sleep when I can get it.
Life's tough, you know? I mean, and so here's what we got. Like, yeah, rule of 3 months, Derek, and we will probably be back to doing a ton of stuff in the off season, which I don't mind the chance to do, because the more that I think about it, Dan, the more I'm like, our podcast works really well for off season stuff, because that's especially when we could talk whether it's draft, free agent, so on and so forth. There's
Right.
so much conversation right now because we just launched Bear and Balance. I don't know if you've ever taken a listen to it, but it's JB and Lester going over through
I've
the
actually
game.
listened to every episode.
There you go.
It's podcasts on my listening material when I'm doing housework at my real job, not my side job.
Which is rad, because in that case, you like the main thing that we wanted to do on the Windy City Network was make sure that, because at least I felt like this as the post game person, I was like, you don't even know the amount of times that we get off the air and I go, shoot! I screwed something up so badly because we did an instant reaction, and it's the only thing on the network for like 2 days. And so having two very measured, very professional guys come in and go through it makes me feel a lot better. That's for sure.
Well, you can't get much more measured and professional than the boss man
I
himself.
feel like you can't, seriously. But let me see right here, because I may be able to pull my webcam in and just paper it over. But what I want you to do before we get on the air, while people are jumping in, you have literally already got 3 people in the chat, if you find it online, that are already talking about your love for Greg Roman. I want you to give the pitch before
Oh,
we do the official recording, while I see if
I
I
have
can't get a video feed.
man, I've actually got people who think I have thoughts that matter. That's amazing.
Well, so you got to
Um,
remember that, like, whether it's Windy City Gridiron, I would argue that I am currently the biggest Greg Roman fan on the network, and he's like third, second on my list. Now, granted, I'm also the guy that every time I get asked, I go, it doesn't matter. I want to replace the GM, so I'll take whoever the GM knows and just start from
Now,
there.
before I get into that, how do I see the stream? Do I just like click on this
You
play
could
button
you could
and I
just go to
see who's
YouTube,
in there?
and
Okay,
then you'll just
cool.
catch right up and see it.
Go on that tube of views, as it were.
You bet. But we got to hear it, because you've got the stats, you've got the argument. I know you do. Lay it out.
uh, yeah. It's hard to really like try to convince someone that you're right versus wrong, because I'm not sitting here saying that I fully believe that Roman is perfect, because he's not. He has issues working outside the hash marks with the deep passing game and outside passing game. And I'm not sure if that's kind of like, I've always wondered when I watch him call plays and stuff, because he is probably, in terms of his running game blocking schematics, one of, if not the best designer in the league. He has completely reinvented the running game in a league where running the ball isn't cool, you know?
Right.
So he does that well, and I think I kind of wonder when I watch his game film and his play calling if he kind of just believes of, I'll ask you a question, Robert. What's the shortest distance between 2 points?
Oh, well, my engineering degree from Baylor University tells me, Danny, that's a straight line.
Right. So, and what is Greg Roman doesn't go laterally, does he?
Not
He goes
really.
right ahead.
One thing that I love about him, though, is to his credit, he attacks all three, like, A, B, and C gaps appropriately.
That's
So,
right. But he doesn't I guess it's just weird because he doesn't fully just he doesn't fully get himself to just go outside the hash marks. It's like he almost believes that to a fault. And
Right.
I'm not sitting here saying that it's right or wrong. I'm sitting here just, it kind of is just what it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
But Roman would be my choice if provided I know he's bringing in someone to help him with the passing game, because you can't have today's NFL without
the passing stuff.
Without passing.
I know what you mean.
Like, and the stats, the big stat I that I've come to really like, is, as many others have, is DVOA. So the big thing with DVOA is it's basically over you who's the best and most efficient and added the most points, etc., etc. Greg Roman has never finished outside the top half of the NFL, no matter who his quarterback has been, no matter where he's been calling plays, no matter what offense he has had. He's had Colin Kaepernick. He's had Alex Smith. He's had Tyrod Taylor. He's had Lamar Jackson. He beat the Bears with Tyler freaking Huntley. Like, was that a great game? No. But he does things that are well. The DVOA teams for those Tyrod Taylor Buffalo Bills teams under Rex Ryan were like 16-13, if my memory serves. I don't have the numbers pulled up directly in front of me, but it's just it's maddening to me that we as Bears fans have seen Matt Nagy hired. Matt Nagy's highest DVOA was 24th or something like that the year he got here.
Right.
So how do we quantify that? Why was Nagy so sought after when we don't even really know where he began and Reed ended in Kansas City? And we know for a fact Harbaugh's a special teams guy. That's where he cut his teeth. I guess I just don't understand this vitriol a lot of the fan base and even the Ravens fan base seems to have for Greg Roman, when at the end of the day, he seemingly always has really efficient, well-scoring offenses that do things well. And he's probably, in terms of play callers, the most balanced you're going to find. Now, I will wholly admit I like the idea of Byron Leftwich, but I have similar concerns to him that I had with Nagy, even though Nagy was my number one when they hired him. But that question is, where do Tom Brady and Bruce Arians end, and where does Byron Leftwich begin?
Yep. And I think that's a question a whole lot of people want to answer. I mean, one thing that you brought up, because I actually do have an answer to the question you're talking about. I've seen it since 2017, right? You would have, if you had asked enough fans, you would have gotten a good 8 to 10% share of fans that were willing to hire Joe Brady as their head coach as early as, or as recent as probably a couple days ago, and he just got fired from Carolina. So not only do you have the chance, but it sounds like that own organization doesn't want him as their offensive coordinator anymore. It seems like there is a trend right now of whatever the offense that's popping off, especially popping off in the passing game, that offensive coordinator or guru, whether it's Kellen Moore, to pick on somebody, Brian Daboll, Byron Leftwich, Matt Nagy, John DeFilippo in 2017. I mean, you can name whoever the current passing offense is in the NFL, and that's who ends up being a favorite for head coaches. And don't get me wrong, I think Kellen Moore's a really good coach. I've talked about this on other Wednesday night streams. I also think that if you handed me 3 weeks to design a random play sheet off of Madden, I could probably win a bunch of football games with the talent they've got in Dallas. Now, that's not to say that that takes anything away from Moore specifically. Cole, Brady got fired, if you didn't notice. Joe Brady is out in Carolina. But anyways, I don't mean to get off the point. The purpose of me saying that, Danny, is to suggest that, like you're talking about, Greg Roman ends up getting, I don't know, hated, but a lot of people end up coming down on him because he's a much more boring choice than insert passing game coordinator. You know what I mean?
Right, but I guess I'm lost at the point where, when did boring but effective become not cool. Like I've never understood that. It's like the people who complain like watching the NBA, like, oh, guys who get a third of their points at the free throw line are boring, but they're scoring still. It
Right.
still goes to your overall point totals at the end of the year. It doesn't. Not everything has to be a dunk or a 3-pointer. There's something to be said for kind of just doing things well,
Right.
in all facets. You don't have to be Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott, and Tony Pollard. Like you said, Dallas is they've got an embarrassment of riches.
Yep.
And it's really not even fair to compare them to many offenses in the league because they're just more talented.
Yep. 100%. Also, are you warm? You ready to react to this game?
Yeah, let's... Oh, boy.
Let's do it.
Let's
and
react.
Feel free to give me a visual signal of some kind. Don't say it on the air. I'll close up the show. But I know you got to go at some point, so feel free to just give me some sort of...
Oh, you know what? I'm actually pretty free for a full reaction.
Nice.
To be truthful with you.
Nice. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to warn Bears fans that are listening. I have no idea what this reaction show is going to be because this was pretty chalk. Like, if anything, it felt like this game. I'll even say this on the air. This game felt to me like the Cardinals went up 14-0, and both teams like did play out a football game while kind of knowing it was over. Going all the way back to Jalen Johnson, either getting completely stutter stepped without Murray making a move or making a business decision to stop Kyler in the end zone. You know what I mean, Danny? Where it's like, this game had a very weird feel to it. You know what? Let's just talk about it.
It feels like a team that kind of knows their destiny, right? It's kind of over. They know it's over. Nagy knows it's over. And it feels like with the Nagy kind of knowing it's over thing, we now know, based off the broadcast and another tweet that surfaced, Nagy's calling plays again. He's doing this his way. Like, it's kind of like the old adage of, if I'm going out, I'm going out my way.
I guess. If his way is...
It doesn't make it right or good, but...
Right. But so,
he's
roll.
doing it what he wants.
Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Perfect. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Me, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here on the Windy City Gridiron podcasting network. And I'm coming at you live right after the Bears lose at home, now their 6th loss in 7 games, to the Arizona Cardinals, a 9-2 team coming into Soldier Field in the midst of bear weather, beating the Bears a sound 30-something to 22. Was it 34 to 22? 33 to 32?
34.
Thank
32?
you, Dan.
Yes.
I suddenly,
like
floofing the box score
it's
is...
a game you want to forget.
Right. No, I mean, whatever it was a lot to more than I expected.
33-22.
And as you can hear, I'm joined by Danny Meehan, my Rule of 3 co-host, which we will spin back up in the off season, we promise. Danny, how you doing?
We're all good, man. Like you kind of alluded to, Rule of 3 has been a little bit put on the back burner, mainly because of my whole thing. I'm getting married. Our wedding is in 6 days.
Congrats.
Me. Yeah, it's a fun time, but no one ever tells you, no matter how done you think you are with planning, there's always more to plan and do. So
all the way till the day
that's been taking up a lot of my time, on top of my full-time career with the fire department, and I've been washing windows and cleaning gutters on the side to help fund the wedding, so I'm not quite doing much at home outside of sleep.
Well,
you catch what I'm saying.
Oh, and if it helps, Danny, it's not like we're missing much of a season here as the Bears continue to seem to march down the staircase towards problematic areas. I don't know. The trouble with this game is, at least it felt to me, right? Like, Dalton came out and the Bears ran the ball. They didn't pick up any yards. They ran the ball again. They picked up 4 yards, memory serves, which 2nd and 10 run pushes the Bears to 3rd and long. Talked about it a lot this season. They seem to keep doing it. And then Dalton throws the ball behind Jakeem Grant on a wide open crossing route. It's tipped, falls into the Cardinals' hands. And I don't know what you were thinking at that point, Danny, but this was pretty much how I envisioned it. I mean, not to the specifics, but the Bears coming out, sputtering on offense, immediately giving the keys to the car to the Cardinals, and the Cardinals taking it and driving it, which turned into a 21-yard beautiful throw for a touchdown on 4th and 3 by Kyler Murray. I mean, it was the start to the game I kind of expected. What about you?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that they're playing the Cardinals team 15 years after the Bears went to the Super Bowl. And what are we talking about? Like the Denny Green rant of the Bears are who we thought they were? Well, kind of that sentiment kind of still applies, no? The Bears are kind of who we thought they were.
Yep.
They're not a good team. The offense, much to Hub Arkish's dismay, is not better with Andy Dalton. And I think it's funny that we saw a good percentage of Bears Twitter and other people like Benjamin Albright saying how the offense is so much better when Andy Dalton plays. The offense is a little more efficient, but it's also a lot more safe and easy to kind of game plan against because Andy Dalton, for lack of a better term, is still Andy Dalton. He's solid if not unspectacular.
I think it's hilarious that everybody keeps calling the Andy Dalton offense safe because at least based on what I saw, he could have thrown as many as 4 interceptions if Detroit got their hands on everything.
Yeah, I think it's more the play calling.
Right.
And it's easy to game plan against.
Oh, I get you. It looks like the Brian Hoyer offense. It looks like what the Nick Foles offense should have been. Like standard Bears, like tall, not all that mobile offense that we've seen run since Trestman, right? But this was, so Andy comes off of a game in Detroit, 300 yards, that, especially on second watch, was not near as pretty as I thought it looked on the initial Thanksgiving watch through. Comes into this game at home in the midst of bear weather, and oh my gosh, this was not good, Like 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion don't erase the damage that 4 interceptions all across the field, 3 of which were on, at least in some degree, on him. I think the one where Cole Kmet, dropped the ball straight into Budda Baker's hands probably doesn't count on Andy Dalton. At least I don't think it should, right? But nevertheless,
but that's another thing, talent evaluation of this regime, and Cole Kmet still isn't any good. But at least he's got that thing going from him. He's probably likely the most handsome backup tight end in football. Good for him.
I feel like the Cole Kmet dialogue is so tough because this is the kind of game, just to call it out, right? I've been more positive than some on Kmet, and I think I can stay that way. I don't need to be reactionary because the trouble is, Danny, there aren't that many great tight ends in the NFL, which is not to prop up Kmet. It's like if Kmet can get a nose for finding zones and become a better blocker because he's somewhat young, then he'll have a place in the NFL to where you called him a backup. Maybe he'd back up one of the really good tight ends, but there's not 32 quality receiving tight ends, and in an offense that's not going to break 3,500 yards, he's probably going to catch 500. But the Tampa Bay drop hurts. This drop hurt a lot. Like, there are enough of these plays that Cole's piling up where you go, oh, we can't be doing that. And like you say, definitely a clunker from 85's part, Yeah,
it's not great. But it shouldn't be a shock. The whole team isn't good or great. Like the what's the silver lining of the team this year, Robert? It's
Fields.
It's Robert Quinn probably having the second best season of his life.
Oh yeah,
32 years old. I would say Roquan, but we kind of know that Roquan's a star.
Right.
But
that play
as we talked about on this show, as much as I like linebackers, and I think linebackers matter more, especially in the vein of him and Fred Warner and all those kind of players, they matter in today's NFL, but they don't change games.
Somebody did say it in the comments. We can't not mention silver linings without talking about Montgomery at the very least. I get
That's true.
Running back, but he is running his butt off this season,
He's good. He is legitimately very good.
Yeah.
Just awesome. I don't know where to go with that. Montgomery is good. Sweet. What did it get you? It got you 22 points.
I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. It's that top level view, right? It's the part where suddenly, I don't know about you, I felt like the Cardinals didn't play particularly well. They made plays when they needed to.
Kyler Murray couldn't hold on to the football.
Right.
The ball was coming out wobbly all game, and you still couldn't do it. And you kind of alluded to it, I want to say it was pre-show, Robert, that this team was making business decisions. They weren't out there putting their bodies on the line, sans Eddie Jackson on one goal line hit. Jalen Johnson made one. It's they know the writing is on the wall. Like, this shouldn't be something that's surprising to anyone. Like, I'm not saying they're going to lay down and quit like they did for Trestman, where there was a complete uprising, because I don't think that Nagy has that level of disrespect in that locker room. I just think we kind of know what this is.
Yeah.
Like, we know where this is leading. And we also kind of get the feeling that the guy that hired the head coach is kind of trying to distance himself from the head coach with all those things coming out. So it is what it is. The game, like you said, scratch, and that's with the Cardinals not playing well. That's with a nicked up and beaten down a little bit Kyler and DeAndre coming back after missing a week or so, right? So, I mean, what were we really supposed to expect? Did anyone really expect the Bears to come out and really, win one for the Gipper kind of thing and really try to put them into the hunt, as it were, for a playoff spot?
Right. And I think what hurts me the most, Danny, about thinking about it this way is, okay, so sure, the Bears came in 4-7, technically one game out of the playoffs, because the playoff hunt in the NFC for the 7th seed is just a mess. I think we can call it that without, lying, right? And on one hand, Danny, if I wanted to be a real sunshine pumper, right, I could say, okay, well, the Bears did put up 22 points against the Arizona Cardinals, and they ended up losing by less than 2 scores, down Allen Robinson, Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, and a host of other players. I mean, they were down their wide receiver 1, their wide receiver 3, and so on and so forth. Oh, also quarterback 1, of course. The trouble here is, for me anyways, when you look at a lot of the guys that are out, most of them aren't slated to even be on the team next year. It's not like the Bears were down a bunch of key pieces, right? Because while they're key to this year's probably over. If it wasn't already over, right? When they lost to UDFA quarterback Tyler Huntley. It probably ended today, and if not, it'll probably end next week. Like, officially, right? Allen Robinson is on the tag. I don't see him and the Bears seeing eye to eye. I don't know about you.
And with Robinson, to be truthful, doesn't it feel like they've almost just phased him out and just force-fed Mooney?
It kind of seems like it. And sometimes that's good. I mean, he had 120 yards 2 weeks back-to-back. It's not like Mooney's a poor player. And then today, he dropped a ball that was a curl over the middle that was somewhat contested. Sure, 100%. You would hope he'd catch it. And it bounced off his hands for yet another near interception.
The interception.
Like, Dalton could have thrown 6 today if Arizona caught everything. He's lucky they only caught 4. I don't want to say lucky, actually, because they picked off quite a few. But this was a game that really left us with not a ton of positives to talk about. Like, we had Monty, obviously, but even from just this game's perspective, let alone the season's perspective, Fields didn't play. We saw Dalton. Dalton did not look like the full-year starter that I think he was billed as in free agency. I mean, imagine this team if Pace's plan to start Dalton all year and try to make the playoffs had happened without Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, and I do kind of want to touch on something you brought up right when we brought the game up. This idea of coming into bear weather. I kind of hate that term, bear weather, because frankly, in my life, like, the bear weather thing happened in the mid-'80s with the real monsters of the Midway and guys like Dent and Hampton and Singletary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Bears don't typically win in bear weather. Like, so I need that adage to stop of these teams coming into the cold, gusty Chicago winters. And, oh my God, bear weather is so good. The Bears don't win in bear weather. You can start talking about it when it happens, but it's yet another team from a warm climate with a mobile, small quarterback and a team based on a passing attack, not a running attack, coming in and beating you in your home turf, in your weather, in your home stadium. I know that a few years back on one of the local state radio sports talk here in Chicago, some guy did a whole breakdown of the Bears are, I want to say, like the past 3 decades under 500 in like quote unquote bear weather. So it's just something that I heard you say, and I just kind of wanted to bring it up.
No, I mean, pick on it all you want.
Funny.
It's so funny though, because it's not like the Bears over the past 3 decades have they been over 500 in general? Like the other trouble, like
no, because they're not a good football team.
Right.
They're not a good organization.
The last big bear weather victory that I can remember was 2013. It was a December game at home, obviously, against the Dallas Cowboys, where Josh McCown and Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall just lit up Tony Romo and the boys. And that was 8 years ago. And since then, I can't remember another big one. I mean, there were some close-ish games. Like we hosted the Packers at one point. Leonard Floyd forced a fumble, scored a touchdown off of it. But like you're saying, I mean, I think the bear weather thing's more of a meme at this point than it is real results, you know?
Well, just like it's kind of like everything else with this organization has become a meme. The coach is a meme. The GM's a meme. The idea that bear weather is real as a meme. Even the Bears-Packers rivalry at this point is a meme. You have to win once in a while for it to be a freaking rivalry, right? Like, I'm sorry, I'm kind of apathetic right now towards the team in general. Like,
which, hey, yeah?
I'm ready to see new leadership. I'm ready to see just finally change. It feels like no matter who this damn organization hires or what they do, it feels like it's the same song and dance over and over and over again.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, or not even to be fair, if there's one positivity thing we can take from this game, right? I know coming into it, I hit the point where I wasn't hoping for a win. I don't know what you were looking for, but
no, I actually wanted them to get absolutely bombshelled.
Do you think they did?
I think they looked terrible. I mean, it really looked like to me at a certain point that Arizona kind of took the foot off the gas.
When was that point to you?
After they went up 14?
Honestly, I can't help but agree. I mean, I can't tell. Honestly, I'll have to go back and watch the game again, you know? But Dalton throws a pick.
That's exactly what it requires. But first blush, this is an instant reaction, right?
Yep.
Like I was watching the game with my fiance, the second they went up 14, I looked at her, I go, it's over.
Dalton throws a pick on the first drive. Yeah. They score. Dalton throws a pick on the second drive. They score.
They scored.
And from there, I'm pretty sure they started basically playing like 2 high shells with the occasional 1 high cover 3 where they try to load the box and stop a run, because the Bears running game actually got going. I mean, I don't have the yards handy to where we could say exactly how many Monty picked up, but the Bears were kind of chugging along on the ground and picking up yards on the inside off interior slants, etc., etc. And the Cardinals would just wait for them to give them the ball back, you know, because they would. It was a matter of time. Suddenly it was 14-7. Then it was 21-7. Then it was, did it become it was 24-14 after that. It looks maybe like the Bears put up a better fight than I think anybody watching the game feels like they did. You know what I mean?
Just quick glance at the box score. Yes, I do know what you mean. Just because I was kind of curious. Monty went for 141 total combined yards.
There you go.
But looking at this, who was the Bears' leading receiver today? Do you know?
Was it Montgomery?
It was Jakeem Grant with 62 whole yards.
There you go.
Further indictment on this damn offense. Your leading receiver in a 2021 NFL football game isn't approaching 70 yards.
Man, every time I watch Jakeem Grant touch the ball, I'm excited he did. Like, I don't want to turn this into a Jakeem Grant love session, but for all of his...
we can do that if you want. I am Jakeem Grant stan number 1. That's my guy.
I love quick twitch speed, guys, you know? And Jakeem Grant really is the kind of man.
Oh, they're so much fun.
He can take a ball from 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage and pick up 15 before you realize he did. He's just quick. I like it, but it's not like Nagy got him going. I mean, it's a mid-season trade, so maybe there's something to that because, you know, this offense, it takes 2 years to learn, Danny. It takes a long time to learn that Nagy offense.
But we're in year 4 of it. Don't worry.
Oh, it's coming. The turnaround's... All jokes aside, I know I sit here, right? I sit here hoping that this helped provide the Bears answers, because I don't know what else George needs. I mean, these are the moments where I look back and I say to myself, okay, George, they lost 6 games in a row last year. Like, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting?
They've lost 5 of their last 6 right now, and it's likely going to be the next 6 of 7 when they lose to Green Bay next week.
6 of their last 7 already. It'll be 7 of their last
7
8.
of 8.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, I was one off, man.
Oh, yeah. It went downhill from 3-2 after the Raiders game. That's for sure. But, I mean, it's funny, though, because we look at the rest of the schedule. Are the Vikings going to beat them twice? I don't believe in the Purple Peel Eaters enough to say that. Like, will the Bears win both games? I don't believe in the Bears enough to say that. But the Vikings just got off. Like, the most positive thing that I think we saw today was that the Vikings lost to the Lions, who are now 1-10-1 on the last play of the game. Did you see it, Danny? 4th and 2?
I saw it. It was like, oh my goff.
But
yeah, I saw it. That's special right there.
Right. I mean, truly the weird position that I think this puts Bears fans in, and it kind of sounds like you and I are trying to process through this feeling without saying it out loud, right? Is we're reacting to a game in which most of the snaps were taken up by players that won't be with the Bears next year. I mean, assuming they cut Eddie Goldman, which I feel like the writing's on the wall there, right? Players that
Eddie, for as much flack as I gave our other co-host on the Rule of 3, Brandon, Eddie Goldman has not showed up this year. Not in the way I would have hoped.
Right.
He's fine, but he's not that dominant nose tackle that he was for a couple of seasons when he, just before, just after that extension.
Right.
Was signed.
So assuming that the Bears cut him for cap relief, that means that most of the players that the Bears had out today for injury, besides Justin Fields, aren't part of the team's future plans. The corners that we're watching play, like Artie Burns and Xavier Crawford and other notable names, aren't part of the Bears' future. So you just end up feeling like you're watching a team that's throwing to Damiere Byrd and Rodney Adams, who dropped his first career target on one of truly the easiest targets that I think you could have given him. And
Bears fans in shambles.
We're watching a quarterback play that isn't on the team next year, unless he gets extended, in Andy Dalton, who took a beating today, not just in the score sheet, but it looked to me like they asked him to play through a potential hurt shoulder. I don't know. I'm not Pro Football Doc, but there was a sack there in, what was it, like the mid-third quarter?
Yeah, he leaned into it. Yeah, he leaned into it because he saw it coming to try to brace for impact, and I think he hurt his shoulder a little bit.
He threw an interception on the next play, is all I know, off a tip ball.
I know you and I, in a sense, we were kind of going back and forth on our group chat, and I said, that hurt, and you immediately said, Dalton looks hurt.
Yep.
Yep. I'm not the only one who saw him, it looked almost like he bruised his shoulder, because he just didn't pick up his arm.
Right.
It's just that hurts.
I mean,
yeah.
All of this.
Such is life.
All of this is what makes this game so hard to instant react to, because a good team, a 9-2 team, came straight in, or walked into Chicago and walked out with what felt like a chalk win, and what is there to say, right? We can't talk about the future because the future didn't play.
Yeah.
Tevin Jenkins did not play. I don't know if he's ready to.
And that's where that's an indictment in and of itself again on Jenkins. I hope he's great, but I've got way more questions than I have answers in regards to him. But that's where I'm kind of at, with, and mind you, I've been on the fire Nagy thing since probably end of last year when they should have probably done it rather. But what are they gaining by playing guys like Andy Dalton? And even as much as I love Jakeem Grant's not a part of this future. Wouldn't it just make more sense to fire them right now, rip the Band-Aid off, and just see who's who and who's worth keeping around? Play the kids? What does Matt Nagy throwing Andy Dalton out there and calling mesh and curls every play going to prove to anybody? It's a legitimate wondering I have, because Nagy's not here. Pace, we still don't know. The jury is out. He probably shouldn't be here if you look at his collective, but it might even just behoove Ryan more to play the kids and see what they have and get rid of the coach you're trying to distance yourself from. Like, I'm trying to think about this logically in the moment, but there's really no good way to look at this.
Not this game. Not this team right now, right?
No, not especially because the most important guy in House Hall was in a winter coat on the sideline.
Yep. I mean, I don't know. I think what drives me nuts, right? I don't. So talking about the playoffs, Danny, because somebody said in the chat, they're talking about how does it not mean anything that the Bears still end up close in these football games, right? And I totally get that.
No.
Like, I totally get where they're coming from, though. That this isn't one of the worst teams in football, because the bad ones are, like, really, really bad. And to be a wild card team might not, I mean, it doesn't look that hard this year. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I get you, but then you got to look at the roster as a collective, right? The roster is old. Moral victories don't matter.
I think that's fair.
The good teams win. Bad teams lose. The Bears are at the lower end of the middle blob with an old, declining roster. Stop pining for moral victories. You want moral victories? Go watch a different sport. There's only 17 of these games every year. At a certain point, shut up about moral victories. Go win a damn game. Because that's all I've heard now for 3 years since that playoff run was, we're coming together as a team. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're really growing as a locker room. To what? You've gotten worse literally every year since the playoff year. Like, I don't know what else we're supposed... When are we as a fan base going to hold the organization to a standard of excellence? This is one of the preeminent founding franchises of the NFL. Treat them as such. Like, I'm just so over this moral victory thing because it's all I've heard my whole life. I'm 31 years old. I've seen, I think, 5 or 6 playoff appearances in my life. Like, at what point does it just stop? Like, expect excellence. Demand it. Like, sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox now because I'm just so tired of this moral victory thing. And
I think it's more a hope that things could turn around next year with better coaching. That if you took pieces of the same roster,
but
added
the
a
roster
little
lacks
spice.
depth, Robert.
Oh, I know.
It lacks depth. It lacks picks. It lacks really everything you need to build a good team with a quarterback on a rookie contract. I mean, I would venture a guess, and I think we actually said it last year. They're much closer to ripping this thing all the way down to the studs than they are winning a damn thing. And obviously, that all changes if Justin Fields is who I think he is. If Justin Fields is the guy I think he is, they're much closer, much faster. But that also means Tevin Jenkins has to be awesome. And Larry Borum better be a lot better than I think he is.
What do you think he is?
I think he's a rotational offensive lineman on a good team. That, until further notice, like, he's looked fine in comparison to guys like, I don't know, Jermaine Ifedi, who was terrible. But I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying I think Larry Borum is bad at football. I think Larry Borum is a 5th-round pick who's got expectations that are putting him in Canton already, and it's ridiculous. Robert, if I told you took a 5th-round player from Mizzou who was an out-of-shape offensive tackle and he became a 4-year backup offensive guard, what would you say?
Oh, I guess backup. I mean, I would say that was normal, right? Like, fifth
Right,
round pick.
that's his expectation. So I just want I guess I'm just really unsure of how we got to this point where we've put like and I know I've probably got a reputation of not liking Darnell Mooney. No, I just want eventually guys to make plays. Case in point, catch the ball over the middle.
Oh,
Like
Darnell Mooney in that case?
yeah, yeah. And I like Darnell. Darnell's got a very solid NFL wide receiver. But the way sometimes I see him talked about is like, what? How good do we think he is? Like, and that's just something I've noticed a lot recently over the past couple seasons. And I think it's because this roster does lack so much talent that when you see someone who pops a little bit, you cling to it and you hold on to it.
Right.
For dear life.
No, I
because
get you.
You're so yeah. So, but basically, that's what I'm saying. If you're both your tackle picks this year and Justin Fields are what we as fans think they can be, you're in a lot better shape much faster. But what are the odds of hitting on a quarterback and both tackles in the same draft?
It's funny though because I'm actually okay. So, like you're saying, I always feel like there's a problem with expectations surrounding this team, right? You say, like, if I said to you, Danny, hey, I think Kmet's getting better at sniffing out holes in zones. Like, sure, so a lot of his yardage is just him running wide the heck open. And it's not like he's generating crazy separation on man routes, but Jason Witten was not some magic separator, you know? It's not like they called Jason Sweet Feet Witten or something like that. There is a path to tight ends that block fine, get open where they can get open, and rely on basically the receiving talent around them to generate space. Now, you say that about Kmet, right? And one side goes, no, I think he's going to be Zach Ertz. I think he's going to be Travis Kelce. And the other side goes, he's a bust. And it's that middle level of expectations, right? That gets so tough because, like you're saying, I mean, right. I think Borum's ceiling right now, like where Borum projects, the more I watch him, is Charles Leno, like a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker.
Hate him then.
Oh, there you go, right? But like, what is it? It's a good pass blocker, a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker that is willing to give a little as far as like stepping backwards and potentially getting pushed a smidge to get a little and keep the passer safe, you know? And so that to me is like the 20th to 16th best tackle or not 20th to 16th best tackle, like on his side. It's average. It's maybe below average. But out of the 5th round, that's great. You know?
That's like, a great pick. Right.
I don't need a top 10 tackle out of Larry Borum.
No. And I did see someone put in the chat, serious question, directed towards me. What stops them from being Cincinnati or the LA Chargers next year? Weapons. Plain and simple. Who is Justin throwing to? Your number one at this moment in time is Darnell Mooney. Who's number one in Cincinnati? Jamar Chase?
Ooh.
T. Higgins? Tyler Boyd? They're all... I would argue that their third option is better than Mooney right now.
Tyler Boyd's
the Chargers, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. I mean, both better than Mooney, right? There's well, and yeah, I understand Mooney is the only receiver technically on the roster going into next year, or one of only a couple. But that's the point. You can't operate under the assumption that they're going to sign. Like, ideally, I would love them to get Gallup and Christian Kirk. I think all three of those pieces would complement very well to each other. But I can't just etch them in like, oh, yep, it's going to be Gallup, Mooney, Christian Kirk as your top three.
They got to get off the negotiation table first, like you're talking about.
Right.
You don't count that chicken before it hatches. I hear you. If any.
Yeah, so I just think it's too early, obviously, but I just don't. I think next year is going to be a year completely focused on the development of number one. And that's what we have to focus on right now because he's really the only guy that matters. Because as we've stated with the instant reaction to this game in totality and specifically, it went kind of how we all expected, right? The number 1 seed comes in, they kind of beat you down real quick, and they leave Chicago with a W.
Yep. I felt like we even beat ourselves.
Yeah. And there was the play where Dalton had the screen and he throws it right to the defensive lineman. Great play by the lineman. Hats off to you. Yeah, certain point that's on the veteran to know a play is dead.
Give me a second, Danny. Something's going on with the audio. We'll re-rack and I'll let you say that again. Yeah. Oh no, I can hear it. Am I coming through all right, friends? But Danny, hit mute and then unmute yourself and speak again.
Am I coming through all right?
Better, much better.
Okay, cool. So yeah, basically, I was just saying, like, there for all the things we, God, I lost my train of thought. All
no
the
worries.
things we say about Dalton being the veteran leader, like that screen pass, there's a certain point where you have to say die on a play. He probably should have just taken the sack there. Like, the play was kind of read out, right? At least on first glance. So just kind of eat it. Don't throw that ball.
Right.
So it's just, certain things like that where it's kind of just the nature of the team, right?
Look, I feel like, Danny, if there's a positive to this game, we kind of already said it, but I'm going to rephrase the way we said it, right? Because we talked about how this one would be looking for answers, Look, the last thing we want to do is dance on Schadenfreude on our own team, right? But now, after having seen Fields' game against Pittsburgh, after having seen Fields' game against San Francisco, but I'll bring up a more relevant game, right? After having seen Fields' game against Tampa Bay, which was not good, and nobody would pretend it is. I think there was some diamond in the rough there, but the team around Fields, oh gosh, it was bad. And by the end of the game, he was playing really badly too. But so this game was the Dalton equivalent. This was Dalton in a spotlight, not against the Lions, and not against potentially Cincy's worst game of the season. Like, Cincy's not a perfect football team by any stretch of the imagination, but that Week 2 game against the Bears is going to be their black mark at this point because they have never looked that poor, But all that aside, we have still seen Fields make better plays and make stronger throws than I think Andy's shown us, aside from that 60-yard gorgeous bomb that he had to Darnell Mooney against, albeit the Lions. But Andy's best play today was that 4th and 3 perfect lob falling backwards to Jakeem Grant in straight up garbage time.
That was a beautiful play. That was a beautiful play.
And I think the 4 picks speak for themselves to say, hey, look, Fields isn't playing good. But apparently, Dalton, in similar conditions, is not playing too much better over a big enough sample size to actually make a claim. 22 points is a lot better than Fields has done. Nobody's debating that. But I feel like the 4 picks really helped put the Bears into a hole that they could just not climb out of. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's fair. I mean, the other positive to kind of jump on what you were saying about Fields is he's clearly learning. The processor is coming along. It's speeding up a little bit. But the one thing I do want to nip in the butt in regards to him and that, I don't think he's ever going to be a guy like Dalton or anything like that where the ball is just out. He plays to play. He plays to get big plays, rather. He wants to make you pay downfield. Guys exist like that in the NFL. Ben Roethlisberger was that way until his body gave out on him. Russell Wilson is still that way. There are some guys that just are going to be that way, and you're going to have to live with some of the mistakes that come with it. And that's just, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. It's just sometimes it's going to have its issues.
Look, I mean, like you're saying, if we called him like a big game hunter, right? Let's not call him better. Let's just use that profile, right? Big game hunter. Well, one of those won the Super Bowl in, I think it was 2020. Gosh, I hate Super Bowl years the more that I think about them because I always screw them up. Mahomes
because you're always Yeah, Mahomes is a big game hunter.
Mm-hmm. Like, you could even say that by the time he actually turned the Super Bowl in his favor, he had completely forsaken the offense itself and was just hanging in the pocket, waiting for somebody to get open, found Sammy Watkins, found Tyreek Hill. Like, Fields' mold can work just fine. And the Bears' offensive line, they weren't terrible today. A name I have yet to say on this podcast, Danny, has been James Daniels. Like, over weeks and weeks and weeks, James Daniels has been
very good.
Very good. Like, I don't know what kind of extension you'd be looking at, but there's an option there. You throw an upgrade at center, Tevin Jenkins turns into something, you figure out what in the world Cody is and isn't at left guard so that you can either move on or find an upgrade. Like, you can do decent things. And to be clear, when I say the offensive line was better, they've been so bad that by better, I mean they weren't completely throwing the game away. I don't know. They run blocked decently well. I don't want to give them like passing grades overall too many times this season, but this was all right. The trouble is that the Bears definitely need a talent infusion. They need it in free agency. They need it in the draft. And that's just going to take time, you know?
Absolutely. And what theoretically they should do, in my opinion, if you're talking about just the overall team-building landscape of it, they should do the polar opposite of what they've done under Pace for years, which is invest a lot of money in talent acquisition and free agency and maybe even a couple of trades if you can do it. Hopefully by trading away some of your older, expensive players, like you could probably capitalize on a Robert Quinn season, truthfully, and get something for him. And then invest in young defenders in the draft. That's what I would probably do at this juncture, but, you know, that's completely looking way too far ahead into the future.
I don't know how much too far ahead it is, Danny. Like, that's I think, the brutal part as we wrap up this instant reaction. The Arizona Cardinals walked into Soldier Field on a snowy day and reminded the Bears that they aren't going to be good tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, it will take some time. I would even tell you with a straight face that I think that there would be real merit towards taking a 2022 season to pay off all your dead cap, gut the team for what you can get for it, where relevant. Like, as much as I know Brandon would jump down my throat, I would at least offer Eddie Jackson around the league to see what he's worth, because I love him as a player. But will he be there when the Bears are better? Like, I really love Eddie Jackson as a player. I'm just not opposed to trading players that can get you something. Does that make sense? Like a Khalil Mack.
No, and I think you and I are very much on the same page. I don't know if they can even move Khalil Mack, because I think that probably hurts them inevitably more than it helps them. But, I mean, if you can get the right stuff for them.
A 2022.
Point, like,
yeah.
It's like everyone who's followed me knows Khalil Mack's probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite football players, regardless of team ever. I loved that guy in Oakland. I loved him when he was coming out of Buffalo. But at a certain point, you got to draw the line of when is enough enough? When is it time to just rip the Band-Aid off?
Yep. And gosh, I would love if we could make that decision soon. I mean, I don't think everybody needs to be too heavy on locker room culture in a professional locker room most of the time, Danny, but gracious alive, don't you think it's eating at the players at this stage that they...
It's got to, especially when you got that report from Jay Glazer that came out post-Lions game that dudes were coming up to Matt Nagy and saying it was nice playing for you. Like... Like, what? And, you know, you say what you want about the Mark Kunkel report. Obviously, I don't think Mark Kunkel was wrong, per se. I think he maybe misdetermined his information that he was given, is what maybe happened. But when you have players going up to the coach like, hey, nice playing with you, man.
and then he's not fired.
But where I was going with that is Jay Glazer doesn't make things up.
Right.
That's not a random. That's not Andrew Schultz like saying the locker room is completely quit on Nagy. And then you go look at his bio, it's like, oh, he hosts a basketball podcast with Allen Robinson. Who would clearly have an axe to grind with Matt Nagy that's on that podcast? I mean, let's use deductive reasoning there.
Yep.
So, I mean, it is what it is. That locker room's got to be the absolute most, I want to say, like, destitute wasteland of optimism there is, because everyone knows where it's at. It's over with.
And I always think it hurts when it comes to these players. Like, granted, we are talking about professionals. Like, Eddie Jackson out there, number 4, probably wasn't thinking about Matt Nagy's job. He probably wasn't thinking about even winning the game as he dragged James Conner down at the half-yard line, which is one play that I will bring up because in a game full of business decisions, 4 was out there playing. And I almost wonder whether he had Twitter on his mind, Danny.
That's exactly what I was about to say, Robert, because I mentioned that play earlier in the podcast. And you know what? He's never going to live down that whole thing of anyone can make a tackle, and then Xavier Crawford proceeds to show him that not anyone can make a tackle. You know,
oh gosh, that one was so bad.
It is what it is. But you know what? I will say of the Eddie from first blush actually was good today. Eddie did his job per usual. He's still not making plays and when you know what he is and what he does, and that the rest of the secondary is, for all intents and purposes, a bunch of hot garbage, you don't have to throw at him.
Why would you?
Why would you?
Artie Burns is out there, like Xavier Crawford.
Dude, Shelley's out there.
Not anymore. He's not.
Just random names in the secondary. Yeah.
I mean, look, my issue. I feel like we can start closing the show up with final thoughts. We've just rambled and reacted now on a very weird Sunday afternoon, but I feel like
we really didn't address much of the game other than it was kind of chalk. We kind of just got into talking. That was it.
We talked about Xavier Crawford missing a tackle, Andy's 4 interceptions. I feel like mattered a lot more than the 20-some-odd completions or the 220 yards or the 2 touchdowns. Like, the Bears never closed the gap to closer than 7, which was immediately answered with a touchdown the other way. So, what's there to say, right? And with the San Francisco game, they took the lead, and then the defense didn't defend it, you know? Like, either they did or they closed it to a lot closer than just 7 points. But anyways, all that to say, this game was a tough one because we're not talking about positive plays from young players. We're talking about Kmet had a really rough day. Mooney did not have a stellar day. The offensive line was, I don't want to say unspectacular because the quarterback was rough enough in terms of just overall results that it continued to highlight the scheme issues that we've talked enough about, both on air and in private. I mean, It was just, and on the other side of the ball, on defense, how mad can I get that Xavier Crawford misses a tackle? I mean, I'm mad at the GM that he's on the team at all. I feel bad for the fact that Sam Mustipher, a starting NFL center, has plunked the ball on the ground now 4 and 5 times, if I'm remembering Dalton picking one up on the ground.
I think it's 5. I want to say it's 5.
Like,
he's kind of like spiked the ball into the ground on the snap.
He's a UDFA that became a starting center. No, we didn't add anything else to the position. Is it Sam's fault that he's a UDFA, right? Is it Kendall Vildor's fault that, yes, he's a CB2, he's also a 5th-round pedigree? Like, that stuff does matter, you know? I feel like we have to hold Pace accountable in these conversations. The McCaskies may not, right? But we came into this season with Andy Dalton.
Oh, that's all I've been asking for, Rob, when I was on my little rant of when is mediocrity and moral victories enough?
Right.
Like, you got to hold Pace. Go look at Pace's overall track record. The guy is a good drafter. I will never say otherwise, especially when you get past the first and second round. He's one of the better in the league at finding middle round talent. But his issue, you can't keep leaving the first day of draft with 2 guys.
Well, lucky for you, we only have 4 picks in April's draft.
Oh God, I'm I'm a draft nerd. How am I supposed to get amped for this?
Hey, it's less selections to think about. They're gonna be good. No, I'm kidding. I mean, Danny, what am I supposed to say on a Bears podcast when folks talking about how good David Montgomery is make me think to myself, gosh, I hope he finds success elsewhere because it'll be a faster journey than finding it in Chicago, right?
And I did see someone mention money to spend on the defensive side of the ball and mention the name J.C. Jackson. Be careful what you wish for. J.C. Jackson is sexy. If you watch him on a play-to-play basis, it ain't great. It's very, very frustrating.
But yeah, I mean, this is a wild one. Like, I agree with anybody talking about it because I've seen it a couple times. Danny, I've seen it everywhere. It's Windy City Gridiron. It's Twitter. It's everywhere. Talking about how the worst part.
It's at work in Chicago. I work with 13 other Bears fans on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I have never put it this way on my podcast, Danny. There is a point where the elephant in the room is as simple as saying it doesn't bubble up to pace. Firing pace puts the ball back in the hands of probably the least capable, part of the Bears organization. Is that fair to say? That when it comes to trusting the McCaskies to select another GM, I do not have much faith in the team that needed a consultant to pick pace out and has allowed it to get to where it is. It's not that I hate Ryan Pace. I just, as far as evaluating his job, he does things in a way that only one other organization does. That's New Orleans. And right now they're in the thick of it, to say the least, because they lost their Hall of Fame quarterback talent. And most of the other teams that I can look around and say, hey, how many other teams manage the cap this way? Are teams like the Seahawks. And let me ask you something, Danny. How are they looking this season? Suddenly, Russ isn't playing like a savant that's just rising above everything else.
I would actually, the last couple of years in Seattle, we had the movement against Pete Carroll, let Russ cook. Well, right now it's looking like Russ might be cooked at this point.
Right.
He looks like he fell off a cliff. I don't know what happened, but maybe it's his finger. But it's not like before he broke that finger, he was looking like the Russ we're used to.
Yep.
Not really, at least.
But whatever happens, I just hope that this is enough. And it won't be, but next week's game might be. Because, Danny, as we close up into final thoughts here, because I need yours, it is Packer week. So welcome to it. Because the Bears go to Lambeau this next week. I think it's Sunday Night Football. I'm pretty sure NBC's leaving it on Sunday night.
You know what the worst part about this is for me? I get married the 11th, right? So I get to get off the highest of highs that I've ever had in my life. Literally probably going to be the best day I've ever had in my life. And then on Sunday evening, I get to watch this. Why? Why do I do this to myself? It's
NBC says you will, and they're right.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not going to flex it out because they want to just torture me. They want me to go to bed late. They want me to hate myself and just want to gouge my eyes out with a rusty spoon.
On that note, Danny, what are your final thoughts about the Bears taking on the Arizona Cardinals?
I'm glad you got a chuckle out of my misery, Rob. But before I get into one quick story before I get to my final thoughts. When Brittany and I first started dating, she asked me why I watched the whole NFL. And I'm like, well, I'm a Bears fan. She goes, I understand that. I'm a Bears fan too, as is my dad. And I go, cool. Then you should understand that I can't let the Bears just ruin my damn Sundays. So I watched the whole league. And, it's just a fun story that I tell people. But final thoughts, game went as I thought. I think they're going to get absolutely boat raced by the Packers and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. doing whatever he wants in the slot because, Packers this coming Sunday, and I'm not going to let it ruin my high. I'm going to be coming off, like I said, the best day of my life. So let's go ahead and try to make it competitive, I guess. You know what? Screw it. We'll go with an outright stupid projection. Robert Quinn breaks the single game sack record that next Sunday. Really just bringing hope to all. I'm clearly saying that tongue in cheek.
Maybe. I mean, the trouble is that like we saw many Thanksgivings ago, Robert Quinn could do that. He could sack Aaron Rodgers 5 to 6 times, and the Bears could easily still lose 17-13. Like nothing.
I don't believe you.
The Packers defense is popping off right now, but it's the worst kind of rivalry game walking into this one because we're coming right off of the I own you. I've owned you my whole life. And now the Bears go to Lambeau, and we don't know who's playing quarterback. Maybe Allen Robinson will come back. Like, maybe. Who knows? But I know I'm sitting here looking at this game just hoping one way or another the McCaskies get the answers that they need. Because that is truly the most diplomatic way I think I'm going to get through this week. Like, I see you nodding. But I feel like if I know George at all, and I don't, not personally, but following George McCaskey gives me the idea that he is going to allow somebody to fully complete their failure rather than assuming that they will. So
the only question I have for you is, does the rule change in interviews change your mind on that at all?
It does.
Or
they're just not mathematically out of it yet. It's that simple. They're not mathematically out of it yet.
Mathematically.
They technically could go on a miracle run. But
and mathematically the Cubs can win a World Series next year. They're not going to.
But they haven't mathematically lost yet. And so I'm telling you, Danny.
Well, you're a Rangers fan. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak.
I think it's that simple with George McCaskey that Nagy lost today.
I agree.
Big blow.
I agree.
If they'd lost to the Lions, also a big blow. But they also lost to, and I think they're out of conference, right? Are the Arizona AFC?
Yes.
Thank God. I am so.
No, Arizona's NFC. They're NFC West.
I am so bad with football divisions. It's embarrassing.
No, I had to do a double take. Yeah, they're NFC West with the Rams, Seahawks, and Niners.
But so they're out of division at the very least. We're gonna face a very close to home opponent in this next week that, let's just say, Virginia hates losing to him. But so at this point, I really think it's just a matter of waiting for the end. It's about when the other shoe drops. And I do think, to answer your question, that rule change, this is my final thought, will eventually lead to Matt Nagy getting fired. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think that's especially if they get embarrassed again, where you get if you get another Rodgers moment saying I still own you, like nothing's changed in the month that's passed or whatever. We know the McCaskies hate losing to the Packers. That's nothing new.
Yep. I think it's truly, and this is the worst part about where Bears.
Rob, why are we forsaken?
I hear you. I mean, I really think, as awful as it sounds for Bears fans, because truly I think this is the worst news, right? It is just a matter of time. It's just a matter of the final paperwork getting filled out. It's a matter of, the losses that all of us fans know are coming, happening, and just waiting for the end. And I think, personally, that's got to be the worst kind of ship to be on, right? Like, I would hate right now to be Bill Lazor, John DeFilippo.
We're like, so Nagy's staff is literally like the band playing on the Titanic. It's been an honor to play with you, brothers. And
right.
Just going down with the sinking ship.
It's a weird one. But, Danny, that'll about wrap up our rambling, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you and I have gotten well, specifically me, which I don't think anyone can blame me. It's been almost 2 months since I've talked live or on a podcast at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then people reach out to me, and I can't justify it. Today I could justify it because we're about wrapped up with everything wedding planning wise. But
Bam. Excited to get you back on board, by the way.
Oh, I'm excited to be back, man. I don't think people realize, like, when this is part of your, like, weekly routine of recording on, like, between Tuesday and Thursday every week, depending on everyone's schedule, like, you kind of start using it as an outlet, and, like, you start using it as a way to kind of get in touch with, you know, you guys, Jacob, Brandon, you guys aren't just my podcast hosts. You're my friends.
Of course.
Like, we do this together. We're all in this together. So, you know, it's good to be back for the first time in a couple 2-3 weeks.
And on that note, where can folks find you online?
You can find me on the old Twittering thing. You can find me at my name, Dan Meehan, the number 90. You spell my name, M as in Mary, 2 E's as in Edward, H-A-N as in Nicholas. And the number is 90. And, you know, eventually, I promise you, Jacob and I will get that draft cast back up and running. I've said as much to Lester as well. Just this whole year has been nothing short of chaotic. Controlled chaos, as they like to say in the UFC.
Well,
You know?
I'll tell you what, there wasn't anything quite as chaotic as my Baylor Bears' big victory over Oklahoma State yesterday, which was nothing short of a wild football game. And now that we're over an hour on this podcast recording, I figure I can talk about that even just a smidge, because how fun is it watching a defensive goal line stand to win a game? I don't feel like you see that near as often as the offensive, like,
especially not in the
score to
Big
go
12.
ahead. Especially not in the Big 12. But hey, I mean...
And Dave Aranda and his perpetual constipated face will eventually find himself in the NFL. Yes, he will. Here he comes.
Oh, I feel like Aranda has hit the point where, as a Baylor fan, I anyways think that the writing's on the wall, even stronger than it was with Rule, right? Where it's a matter of where he wants to be. Does he want to be an NFL DC? Then it's just a matter of getting the right job. Does he want to be an NFL head coach? Then it's just a matter of getting the right offer. Like, I personally, even crazier, I get it, Baylor homer, I see a guy who is an extraordinary innovator on the defensive side of the football. He thinks about the game the right way. He's very pro fourth down. He's very pro RPO, play action, all the analytical stuff that we would consider quote-unquote basic modern football. If there is a defensive hire, he's probably 3 years too early for Chicago to think about, and I know that. But I can't stop thinking about it, where it's like he has all the qualities I would want to see in a head coach. He just doesn't have the resume yet. He's Baylor's head coach twice. You know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
Like, I get it. You can't.
Yeah, I'm with you. Before I hear people who've listened to this show for we've been together going on 3 seasons now, right?
Yep.
Am I right on that?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows I'm a Southern Illinois grad. I just kind of wanted to give a quick hat tip to my SIU Salukis. Not the best year, but they did make it to the second round of the NCAA FCS, so the Championship Series playoffs this year. Nick Hill took over in 2016. He took over a 4-7 team, and they're now 8-5 in 2021, making it to the second round. Shouts out to Nick Hill and putting NFL talent into the league, like Jeremy Chin and guys like that. So FCS, small-time team, making some noise.
There
Go
you
Dogs.
go. Mm-hmm. Keep an eye out, Bears fans, for Bear and Balance. They all have Bear in the name, so I got to make sure I get it right. But Bear and Balance.
Or Barely a Podcast. Listen to Barely a Podcast.
Well, that's just that happened. Something has to happen for that to happen. Okay, that's our emergency news banner podcast. Which, that's a great name. So thank you. I think it was Jeff who came up with that one. But so what is it? Bear and Balanced will be with you tomorrow for a more, let's call it, succinct take on this game. And then Bears Banter coming up later in this week. Of course, Bears Over Beers going through next week's Packer matchup. That'll, let's call it fun television. Just leave it at that, I guess. But so, until then, You can find me and my work on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz and Run Pass Opinion on YouTube. We're on Wednesday nights. We will go through this behemoth of a game. It'll be a great time. But so until then, Bears fans, thanks for sticking with us. Bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me. I think that's one of the loosest shows I have ever recorded, and that's just going to be fine today.
Truthfully, I try to be looser all the time, but that was probably, even for me, one of the looser shows I've ever done.
An hour, no breaks. We were like, what do you talk about? So here's the weird part, right? This is my 2 cents. The worst part, I should have said this because I'm thinking about it now. The Bears last year lined up in a similar game in Tennessee, right? That was, with Nick Foles coming in, right? And they looked so bad that getting on afterwards to do postgame, it was easy to be just furious, right? Yeah. This game, zero emotion. They weren't even bad enough to be angry about it. They just looked all right and also threw 4 picks.
Hey, Rob, you know what that feeling is, Rob? It's apathy. You don't care.
Akusai, I saw that comment the first time. That toss crack comment's great.
I was actually just about to bring that up, because I know Rob and I got into it a few shows, right before the show had to be put on hiatus with us, that Rob is like, toss track is not a bad third down play. And I was like, Rob, it's a bad third down play for them. They can't run it.
Well, that's the whole issue with the Nagy offense, Dan. It's been that issue where it's like honest opinion, this 2021 edition is so watered down and bad. It's a special schematic bad compared to what they used to be, which is wild. I don't know if it's just they trusted Trubisky more or whether the Trubisky thing burned them, but they are just completely non-creative at this point,
I actually appreciate how, Jordan, you've been so active in the chat because I'm trying to glance over there every so often. And of the non-coordinators that they could hire, I'm actually completely on board with the idea of Harbaugh. But here's the thing. With these contract extensions that are being handed out in college, and he is emperor in Ann Arbor right now, if they offer him 10 years, $100 million, why would he leave?
Danny, remind me.
And the other part of it is, if he does leave, he's not just a coach. He's your VP of football.
Yeah.
Because he is your emperor.
But you hired him to be the emperor. To be totally fair, right?
Exactly.
You're not hiring Jim Harbaugh thinking that he's just going to be what Jordan just said, not to get too off track. I think Harbaugh has said out loud that coaching the Chicago Bears is his dream job.
Yes. Yep.
Now, does that mean...
Like I said, I'm more open for it than most because I know, especially in comparison to you and especially B, I believe in running the football, and I believe that it has a spot where it matters, especially when you're trying to salt away a game in which you have the lead. Not just running to run the ball, get off the bus running, that thing. But I think we've gone too far the other direction, and I know for a fact that's why I'm so about Roman and so about the idea of if Kyle Shanahan were to get fired, get him into Chicago immediately.
Good luck with that.
He's not gonna get fired. They'd be foolish to fire him, even though I do think it is funny if all things are being equal, you have to look at him objectively and say he probably could deserve it. But regardless, Harbaugh would be my favorite of the guys that have been previous head coaches because I believe and I also think he knows the expectation here. He's played here. He understands it. And I think he would get his own hand-picked GM. And I see the Jeff Ireland suggestion. I think Jeff Ireland's a tremendous talent evaluator. he'll never be hired in Chicago.
Well, so speaking of Danny, you mentioned talent evaluator. That's the one part of this whole head coaching thing that I just want to throw out there that, like, I hope the Bears get the balance right. I don't think, if you look around the NFL, that there is a single head coach that you can point to that truly does it all well. Like, I personally think...
No, there's not.
That if there's one thing Bill Belichick has done phenomenally, it's that he has empowered Josh McDaniels to be the offensive guy on his staff, and that offense looks good. Like, you take a look to use the exact opposite, right? That's a positive example. Let's use a negative example. Danny, I do not like the way that Kyle Shanahan seems to pick his players. I don't know. There's something that frustrates me. I can't tell if it's Lynch.
So there are certain guys, and you probably agree, there's only a handful. Parcells was one, Belichick's one, that can handle being the talent evaluator, being the decision maker, being the emperor, as it were, to use a bit, or
right.
I just used,
the ultra,
as well as being the play caller, the designer, the offensive coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. That's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
Anyway, Robert, I got a boogie here. So
do it.
I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate all the interaction with the guys listening. Have a good night, and maybe I can hop on next week or the following for another reaction if you'll have it.
We'll figure it out. Talk to you soon, Danny.
All right, see you guys.
Well, folks, that wraps up another one, and now you see that all I did was just stick a picture of my webcam on top because technology things. But hey, friends and fans, can we talk about the fact that I finally got through a show where the technological difficulties didn't come on my end, okay? Like, we even spot fixed that buzzy microphone right in the middle of the show. I'm with it. But so, anyways, this is a weird one. I don't think any Bears fan that was watching... I don't know. I'm sure you guys all feel the same way we kind of did, where it's like, there were some positives. The Bears offense looked better-ish, but all those players that were playing better-ish don't really factor into next year much. Like, it's a matter of waiting at this stage of the game, I think anyways. They probably have to go out there and just get smoked by the Packers, and there's not a lot of ways around it. Somebody mentioned the Lions victory. That was awesome. I had been wanting the Lions to be 0-16-1 so that they could have infinite arguments with their fan base, like within themselves, about which season was worse, 0-16 versus 0-16-1. But the longer and longer that I watched that Lions team, the worse and worse I felt for Jared Goff. That sounds weird, but like truly, as a player, Jared Goff specifically, I feel like they'd earned one somewhere. You know what I mean? But, like, yeah, you get the idea. Like, let's see. Or, Derek, what are you saying? I don't think the offense was much better. We just turned Monty fully fit. I believe it. I mean, I honestly think, Derek, that there's also a chance that if you took a look at this game, we'd see that Arizona was letting the Bears run it because we were just running the clock out. Like, why jam stuff the Bears? Why? When you could just sit around and wait for the Bears to bleed themselves out. I don't know. I mean, watching the game start was this watching the game start to finish from this first reading is always tough because you can't quite get a handle on what the defense wants to do, but it did not feel like the Cardinals were playing some heavy exoto blitz defense. They probably, my guess is that they got up 14 points and felt like they could handle it from there and just started getting a little bit more vanilla. They'd allow yards here and there. It's not like the Bears offense, as it was converting first downs, was doing anything unique or special. You know what I mean? Outside of that double reverse deep ball that they threw, that was neat. But it was the sort of thing where I at least felt like we did have Monty fully fit. He looked awesome. I mean, Monty's a hard charger that is just so fun to watch. No, he doesn't have that, like, let's call it a fifth gear. But there's a point where you don't care, because he'll go out there and he'll get you the tough yardage that you need, and that's good enough. But so, like, Jordan, to your point, as we close out, feel free to get, like, final questions in. Converting first downs is unique and special and hard. But I completely I agree with you, Jordan. I mean, the complicated part about this, and that's what's made, I think, the Nagy evaluation, truth be told, like so weird for as long as it's been has been that the Bears would hang into games that they had no business being in for years. Like since 2018, they would play hard in games that they had no hopes of playing hard in. And by hard, I mean like they lost by 2 scores. Like you said, San Francisco, that was a tight game. They probably should have won Pittsburgh. Like you could earmark all sorts of losses that were truly 50-50. If not, they pulled defeat out of the jaws of victory. The trouble is that like, or at least what I'm trying to talk about, is that this team, the one without Khalil Mack, the one without Allen Robinson, the one without Akeem Hicks, is the team. Until they re-sign Hicks, I don't think he's coming back. Like, at least that's the problem that I'm having, right? Is I keep looking and seeing this team as a little worse than I think some people want to think they are. But even as I say that, they're not the Jets. They're not an abysmal franchise in terms of talent. You could take some of the pieces on this team. You give James Daniels a modest extension at this point, seriously, Borum is massively overperforming 5th-round pick expectations. No matter how much you'll hear me say he's got to get better in the run game. His pass blocking is not bad. Like, he's been way better than a rookie that just lost 45 pounds and missed the whole training camp with injury. Like, he's way better than that person should be. That if I told you the tale of who Larry Borum is, he shouldn't exist. Like, and Grant, there was a point where Leno's pass blocking, especially during like the middle stage of his career, was just fine. I think that there's so many people that just dunk on Charles Leno for being perfectly okay. Not a stud, not a beast, but solid. And Larry is a fresh eyes take at seeing another player pretty much exactly like that, at least from what I'm seeing so far. I love the fact that they're teaching him to hug block. I mean, it's just not holding considered in the NFL, and it's like cheating, in my opinion. It sounds so silly, right? But the whole hug block thing, it feels to me like a rules loophole that the Packers have been getting away with for long enough that seeing a Bears offensive lineman do it, I ain't got no hurt feelings at all. But so, I mean, this is, and like you're saying, Jordan, they did beat Cincinnati. In fact, they thumped Cincinnati. They beat Cincinnati in a game where Justin Fields entered football probably way too early, all things told. Like, there are points and monikers of this team where they clearly aren't the Lions. The question is, how much investment is it going to take to get them past the Lions? I don't think it'll be that much. Like, truly, ground up, I think they could get it done in a year, 2 years. I think they could be much more fun than the 2019 Chargers next season if they can make the right moves. I agree with Danny. Their weapons closet right now is it's not well stocked. And so whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft, whether it's waiting a year and loading up the year after that, you can do things. They'll just need a quarterback, people to throw to, and an offensive line. But I mean, like you're saying, Derek, the trouble is, like, how much does it take to get past the Vikings? The Vikings seem really content to just sit at 5 wins. I mean, the Vikings are this wild team. Which to you is more disappointing, for instance? Just, like, top to bottom, seriously. Because I would not be surprised if the Vikings get rid of Mike Zimmer before the Bears get rid of Matt Nagy. Because at some point, the fact that the Vikings are 5-7 and have had a lead in every single football game of 7 points or more, that becomes a bad thing. Like, the Vikings are choking away wins at such a ridiculous rate, you know, that it's hard to be excited about the future direction of the Vikings outside of, like, a lot of the weapons that they have, but Kirk isn't going to be there forever. And so how quickly can the Bears pass the Vikings? I feel like is up to a new coaching staff meets Justin Fields. I mean, think about it this way, Derek, to use your example. If there is something that I would get excited about with Justin Fields this season, right? Yes, there's progress. Yes, his legs. Yes, he's getting better. Like, I could hit you with all the semantic words. I would truly just point to all the different times where we've seen him make a throw and gone, holy crap. And the rare amount of times that we see him attempt the same deep throws and say, oh, that was god awful. Like, he had him open, he just missed him. Or something like that. We've seen miscommunications, tons. We've seen bad throws. We've seen bad ideas. We've seen him miss blitzes. We've seen a ton of sacks. Like, so many sacks. We've seen little improvements. But what I would really point to with Fields is we've seen big-time throws downfield that he had the opportunity, and the opportunities haven't been often, and he's hit what feels to me, like just off the top of my head, he's hit like 65% of them, which is 20% better than average and a lot better than a lot of the Bears quarterbacks that we've seen in the past have been. Let me see, way too many fumbles at Kusai. Like, Fields fumbles too often. Fields is, I think, up there in the NFL in interceptions. I'd have to look at interception percentage. That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there are real warts that we're freezing off here. There's no doubt about that. It's just that top-end throw that I look at and I say, he's making those, and those are hard to find. And I'm with you, Derek. I mean, what Fields does with the next coaching staff, that merger, that marriage, is everything. Right? If we find another West Coast head coach that comes in and says, we're going to beat you by making Justin Fields throw short, we're going to lose a lot of games, and Fields is going to look very bad. The question becomes, can we create that system where Fields is able to, whether it's off of play action shots or straight deep dropbacks, like whatever it is, generate those deep completions and live with everything else? How can we create an offense that throws the out route consistently, which is so silly, right? I can't believe that I'm sitting here pining for out routes, but Fields loves it. Fields loves throwing the out routes. I swear that kid loves throwing the ball 15 yards or more, whatever direction it is. So if it's 15 yards on a hypotenuse to an 8-yard gain on the sideline, sure, right? And so whatever the Bears look like, they do need to figure out an offense that's going to work with Fields. Exactly, because we need more curl routes, right? But so we'll have to see where this goes. Like, I don't know. We'll just have to play it by ear as Bears fans. But I don't think it will. I don't want to say like it won't get better in a hurry. I more just want to acknowledge that if you guys are like me and we're all impatient human beings, from now to the end of December is a long time away. Like, this could take a minute. It'll take at least a couple of weeks to get things sorted. It'll take probably months after that to figure out the head coach at a minimum. It'll take it could take extra months if we decide that we're going to hire a GM on top of that. Who's the GM? What are we hearing? We'll be in the dark for a long time. And then we'll finally get to March. We'll talk about free agency. We'll have to figure out, are we trying to win this year? Are we trying to win next year? We're trying to do both. Then we'll get to the draft. We'll probably pick 4 times. I hope. I would love to even pick 5. I mean, we will have to figure it out, you know? But the bright side is, I can definitely tell you that Fields looks, at least from what I've seen, even in games like we saw against, what is it? Oh my gosh, who did they just play? This is how connected I've been with Chicago over the last little bit. Not the Lions, the one before that, they played. I'm just gonna have to look it up. I apologize, everybody. The Ravens. That's what I'm thinking of. But so when they played the Ravens, and I don't think Fields played well, I still see him looking tremendously better. Like, that to me was Fields on a bad day, more so than Fields doing his best and playing quite badly. Compared to like what it was earlier in his career, like week 3, Cleveland, week 2, Cincinnati, where he was doing his best and he wasn't playing great, but you saw a little bit of it. The rough edges were even rougher. And so the point in saying all this is to point out that it's not as if this year is without its advantages. Fields has gotten experience. He's playing, he's getting better. But like you're saying, Case, the complicated part is kind of phrasing out this team. I'm just going to read your message. It's closer to winning than it seems. It's also not close. So it's not as if it's forever far away. It's not never. We've just got to figure out how we're going to load this team with talent, how we're going to load this team with weapons, what it needs. If it's me, I would personally figure out whatever you could do to push money to the offense. Make the offense better. Become the 2019 Chargers next year. The year after that, load up on defensive talent. Let that offense set and mesh over a 2022 season, and then in 2023, load the defense back up. Allow Chicago's wild and weird history of just blessing you with great defenders find you some new guys. You know what I mean? I swear in Chicago, by the way, like, I can't explain it. Pick a safety and a running back every single year in the late rounds. They'll just end up good. Like, almost inexplicably. Eddie Jackson out of the 4th round. Adrian Amos out of the 5th round. Justin Herbert out of the 4th round. Jordan Howard out of the 5th round. Tariq Cohen out of the 4th round. Running backs, safeties. They're good. Well, there were years where Chicago's safety play wasn't great. But there's something to this weird idea of, like, you can get linebackers in Chicago and just, they'll be good. And most of that is tongue-in-cheek, sure. It's like saying that Herbert was the 6th at Kusai. But so, like, you're thinking of Borum. Borum was the 5th. But so, Herbert was his 6th. At all of this, I just find myself thinking, the more of those late-round picks we can get, great. The more of those, the more picks in general we can get. I think that there's something to the idea of, did I say 4th? Oh, man. I thought I said Howard was no, Cohen was a 4th, Howard was a 5th, Herbert was a 6th, Jackson was a 4th. Maybe I got tongue-tied somewhere. But so, yeah. Oh, good. Great. Getting body bagged out here. But so, yeah, we'll figure it out. I would love to see the Bears draft a receiver with that 2nd round pick. It would be even better if they could figure out a way to trade one of their defensive players like Robert Quinn, having an unreal year. If you could trade his contract and end up back with, like, some kind of, whether it's a 2nd or a 3rd round pick to continue to use on, I want to load up on wide receivers and defensive backs, which I don't even think is that reactionary. I think our defensive line's going to hurt because it won't surprise me if we cut, it won't surprise me if we cut Eddie Goldman and we let Hicks walk. Just a guess. Maybe we'll extend Hicks, but it just won't surprise me if they go into a rebuild like that. But you're not going to get a lot better with the defensive backs than we have. I mean, exactly. We need every other position other than, what is that? Like, other than a running back, or the QB and a running back, exactly. So it'll just be a matter of waiting to see if the right decisions can get made. But I do think that at this stage, let's see, Quinn would, I can't tell Case about what Quinn would be worth. I think that there's something to be said for the idea of, if they did go on a selling spree with Quinn, would he be the best edge rusher available given the season that he's having this year? I don't know. I mean, edge rushers are hard to find. People pay big money for edge rushers. And now 2 years removed from when we signed the deal, it's getting cheaper, technically. So he is expensive. There's no doubt about that. But if you're going to play him for an entire season, who cares? Becomes kind of the question. I don't know. We'll see. But either way, I'm going to get to editing this podcast. You guys are great. Have fun watching whatever football is left for the day. I'm going to catch up myself. Some phenomenal games that we've got going on. I know, what is the Sunday night game this week? And how are other things going on across the league? I want to take a look at that. Somebody asked earlier about whether I could start doing six picks again. You know what? Just for them? Maybe. Like, that sounds like a fun idea to just get back on and going. Let's see. The Ravens and the Steelers are duking it out. When do we get Bills Patriots? Is that Monday? Oh, they're going to starve us out till tomorrow night. But your pirate streams don't work. Sucks. But so, yeah, we'll get back to football. Either way, remember that I know that everybody knows this. You know what I mean? But any negativity that we express about the Bears here on this channel, I express about the Bears on this channel. The key here isn't to dog on our favorite team. I want you guys to know that the key here is I know what it's like to be a Bears fan with nobody around me in Dallas that's a Bears fan. So I want to relate to y'all just as much as I offer analysis. Like, there's something to me silly enough about not feeling alone out there. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe this is too mushy. But the point is that any negativity is just being a fan, hoping the team gets better. And so we will all figure it out together. So until then, guys, thanks so much for hanging out. You guys are wild, and we'll catch you on Wednesday. Remember, 9 p.m. Wednesday night. We'll be going through the tape as usual. And until then, bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with